Kinks?
My favorite group is the Kinks. I don't think they were androgynous. I just think all the groups who were around that period in the 60s, the men played with bisexuality. Certainly Mick Jagger was bisexual. He had an affair with David Bowie, but he also was in love with David Bowie's wife, Angie, and wrote a song about her. There was in the 60s, men were bisexual. Then something happened; they became repressed. And then women college students more recently have also become very interested in experimenting with bisexuality. In terms of androgyny, I don't think that I think David Bowie plays with this, but I think the Kinks don't. I think that the Kinks their dynamics there were actually the rivalry between the two brothers. And there's a wonderful song called Two Sisters, where one sister is married and very domestic, and the other likes parties. In fact, that was a relationship between Dave and Ray. Although Lola is more an observation. More an observation of what actually happens than an admission of being gay. I think the most almost gay song of Ray Davies is "See My Friends," which was the first raga rock. Is somebody whose relationship is finished, and he wants to be merge again with his friends across the river, his male friends. But of course, he's British, and the British, anybody he's working class, but everybody who's gone to public school in Britain, like Prince Charles, has had gay experiences. Certainly, Prince Charles has almost admitted that.
Almost.
You have a question.
Dan, you spoke a little bit about Lydia Lunch admiring her work, Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, Gwen Branca, and that whole kind of scene. Obviously, this kind of film is a kind of a collision of ideas, not just religious and political ideas, but across music and art. To what extent were you involved with or had contact with the no wave scene, which probably would have been 5, 6 or 7 years to which you're referring there? Was that something that you felt connected to, and was it something that influenced this kind of work in any way?
Well, I was one of the 10 people who saw Teenage Jesus and the Jerks when they first began. Glenn Branca was my best friend for many years. I did many other collaborations with him. I don't think he's new wave. He had a group called with Jeff Lone, who was a friend of mine, and I gave them the name Theoretical Girls. With the help also of Jeff Wall, because I was thinking of girls who do theory, or theoretical girls. The next group, Static, Static. When I did a performance at the Riverside Studios in London, I invited them to perform with me. I actually thought Arto Lindsay is pretentious, so some of New Wave I don't like. I think Lydia is an absolute genius. And she was also very prone to, she discovered a lot of Australian groups. She discovered Nick Cave, Jim Foetus. When I wrote New Wave Feminism, I talked about her as a feminist, and I was afraid that she would read it and trash me. It turned out she wound up teaching at San Francisco Art Institute with Kathy Acker, and maybe became a feminist. So I kind of predicted what she would do. But I was in New York during that time period, so I was very aware of what was happening. But I was also aware of England. I saw the last Joy Division concert. I saw The Fall from the very beginning, and you'll probably notice in Rock My Religion, there's music of The Fall as well. And you're right, it's a real mixture. So we've both been around, right?
Someone up the back.
Yes.
While we're waiting to get the mic up to that person, just Dan, I mean, Julian was touching on this, I suppose, but there was a real tension, wasn't there, between the sense of this being a moment of art and also just music in a way in the late 70s and early 80s. And that someone like Lydia Lunch, for example, would have been appalled by the idea that this was art and I read somewhere not so long ago that a band member turned up to a rehearsal one day and expressed the view that that they thought Teenage Jesus and the Jerks was an art project, and she says, "You're fired."
That's a good observation. This is why I didn't really like a DNA. I thought they were a little pretentious. And in fact, I still don't like Arto Lindsay. He gets a very good press. But of course, a lot of people came from art school. Talking Heads I saw as students at RISD. Lydia, I think, always wanted to be a writer. And the interesting thing about Lydia was she wrote a book called Paradoxia, which is about it's almost a fantasy of her sexual exploits. And I know that she discovered Thurston Moore. I asked Thurston, who's a bit of a prude Puritan, whether they had an affair. He said no, she was too sexual. But I think she's a rock and roll genius, and I think Thurston understands that. She actually ran away from home. Her real name is Koch. She's from a Czechoslovakian background, and I think she's the real thing. I also saw the Ramones in the very beginning, and the person I never saw was actually Patti Smith. So it's weird that she winds up the star of this film. I still think.
Mine's like a pop culture question, actually, on your opinion of more recent rock goddesses like Courtney Love and PJ Harvey, the descendants of Patti Smith.
Well, PJ Harvey, I liked for a while, and then I stopped being interested. In some ways, I haven't really kept up. I still love The Fall. Every album they bring out is absolutely wonderful. I'm amazed that he's still going because he uses methamphetamine and he's also an alcoholic. Recently, when I was in Minneapolis, a collector who's a real rock and roll aficionado gave me a very good CD, which I still like, by a Manchester group called 2X's, which I think it reminds me of Young Marble Giants and Joy Division. But actually, other people discover the music. I'm not discovering so much music as I used to. Partly, I have this hearing impairment, and secondly, I used to go to sleep around 3 a.m., but now I go to sleep at 9.
I think